All right, team, Coach Dana Cavalea here with you with the Becoming a Champion show. And this week I sit down with Tracy Chadwell. She is the founder of 1843 Capital. And she's awesome. And she shares an amazing story with us about following the breadcrumbs, meaning you're going to follow those breadcrumbs and they are going to take you to where it is you are supposed to be. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I really enjoyed it. I think she's amazing, and I know you're going to love it too. So follow your breadcrumbs, sit back and enjoy this episode. You're going to love it with Tracy Chadwell. Thanks for taking the time and coming out today.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure. Happy to.
So I always love talking to winners. You know, I call this the Becoming a Champion show, and I love people that put themselves out there and take many risks. So right. I know you're one of them, but I wanted to ask, how did you get started in venture capital?
I didn't know about venture capital when I was younger. I had a dad who was a lawyer, and my mom very much wanted me to follow in his footsteps and take over his firm. And she thought that it would be a good fallback, you know, in case something happened to my husband, which is really funny and ironic now. But, you know, for her, that was the best advice she could give me. Yeah. And, but it was through working through, I worked for a merchant banking firm and learned about limited partnership funds, which are the vehicles that we use for venture capital. And then I worked for an investment bank out of San Francisco, called Robertson Stephens. And that's really where I got introduced to venture capital and technology companies.
Yeah. And I'm guessing when you first started, it was, I mean, like anything else, it was totally new. You weren't really sure. How did you start to make your moves within that field and within that industry?
You know, I think like everything else, you have to see what makes you feel good inside and what appeals to you and what excites you, because we only have this one shot in life. And so to sort of waste your time focusing on things that don't bring you some sort of joy. I mean, sometimes they say, well, it's not so much about your passion. It's more about doing things that you don't hate. But if you don't hate something, most likely you have some happiness inside of you. And so when I started to realize how exciting innovation was, and, you know, finance has a spectrum of wildly speculative at the seed stage of investing in venture capital, all the way to, you know, debt financing that is very secure on companies that are established and have cash flow coming off of them. But for me, I found that the sweet spot was sort of more towards the beginning side, but with a little bit of risk reduction when companies were just getting started, but they were ready to really accelerate, not at the very beginning stages. And that's really what excited me and brought me joy. And so when I just found out that you could actually participate in these companies by investing in them, I thought that's really incredible. So I really worked my way into finding a position in there. And when I met John Baker, I joined Baker Capital, $1 billion growth capital fund as a partner. I sat down with him and I probably worked on him for 6 months saying, you need to hire me. And these are all the reasons why. And I think I've always been a believer that it's the calls you make, not the calls that you take. And so when you see something that's exciting to you, see maybe how you could fit and how you could add value, and keep pursuing it. And I don't want to say don't take no for an answer, though, because sometimes no is showing you something where you need to make adjustments. Yeah, and
we're gonna dig into that later, because that gets into some of what really attracted me to your story.
Oh, thanks.
And so we're gonna dig on that. But there may be people too that are listening that are not in the finance community that may not know exactly what venture capital is. So just in your words and simple terms, how do you explain venture capital to somebody that says, I've heard that, but I don't know fully what it is?
Yeah, it's a super exciting business and very sexy part of the business right now, but it's also a very small part of finance, because like we talked about before, there's a whole spectrum with finance, all the way from equity, where you're taking a piece of ownership of someone's company, almost like you own 20% of their house or 20% of their car, all the way to debt, where you're just lending people money for the house or the car. So, but in our case, it's technology companies and venture capital. We take a very small piece, anywhere from sort of 5 to 20% of someone's business, and we give them money. And what they use the money to do is to grow, so that the value of their business grows, and likewise the value of our investment grows. And then someday we'll be able to sell that company and get our investment back to return to our investors, because we have investors that invest in us. But the interesting piece of this, and the really hard piece of it, is that most of the companies fail. So that's why you have a venture capital fund, where instead of just doing one investment, we do anywhere from, I personally like about a pool of 12, where some venture capital funds have a pool of 40 or 50, because 90% of seed stage companies fail. When they get to have a little bit of revenue, which is where I invest at Series A, 50% of the companies fail. So you have to be able to invest in companies. It's not just normal finance. We are looking for the companies that can get to be $1 billion or more, because we have to rely on 1 or 2 companies in our entire portfolio to pay back for all of the losses. So that's why sometimes people come to us and they say, hey, this is a great deal. You're going to do 2 or 3 times your money on it. That's really ironically unattractive to us. We're looking for the moonshots. We're looking for the rocket ships.
Yeah. So it's funny because I wrote something yesterday that said, don't try to hit home runs in business, but in your business, that's where there's a star next to it, because you kind of have to hit some home runs to get that average.
It's just the way, we live in this discrete, small, tiny little world of finance, that's what we do. Yeah. It's all about the home runs.
But I love venture capital, because you guys are gamers. You're like, hey, I'm in. I like what I see here.
Yes.
I'm in.
Yes.
But
there is a fair amount of luck that goes along with it.
Yeah, it's like in a way, it's like an educated casino. I don't know.
It is. It very much is. And it's a place where, the more information, the better. But then sometimes these companies can be really fragile, and something can come out of nowhere, like say COVID, and either knock them sideways or really be a game changer for them.
What are some of the common threads that you see amongst A, the companies that fail, and then B, those that you see that get that boost and actually get you the returns that you want? What are some just common threads? I know each one is unique, but common threads for failure and common threads that you see for success.
So let's start with the success, which is that, and then that will actually lead into what the failures are, because it's often the opposite. So some of the things that we look for are founders that have experience and a broad network. So if you're doing something in the healthcare industry, I would love to see you having been in the healthcare industry, doing it before, and now finding a different way and better way to do it, and a network that you can rely on. So you instantly, when you walk out the door, maybe you have 5 customers under your belt. Yeah. So that's what I love that. And then also too, I say clearly defined competitive advantage. So when you have something that's different that nobody else has, now there's a balance there, because it can't be too different, because then it's really hard to sell, because it's very hard for people to think outside the box.
Right.
So those are 2 really mission critical things. And then a huge market opportunity. And then for us specifically at our stage, we're going to look for some of those initial traction numbers and metrics, customer acquisition costs, things like that. So that's usually what really helps someone succeed, is if they have all those pieces together. And it's also a mindset, because maybe I shouldn't say this, because people just start saying it disingenuously to me. But when someone comes and says, I'm really going to build this big, I'm taking this all the way, we're really predicting that we're going to IPO this company. Ironically, those are the people that really succeed, because they have a vision for where they're going, and they try every day. There's this thing called OKRs, objective and key results, from a guy named John Doerr. And when they set those objectives of those large companies, and then the key results of where they need to go and what they need to do to achieve them, there's a much greater chance of it happening. So on the not so successful side, on what causes people trouble, I would say not having experience, right? Mm-hmm. The people that are, and it's a struggle for us sometimes to back these really young founders, because some of them may have an incredible idea, but unless they're backed and surrounded by advisors and people on their team that have done it before and are well networked, they really struggle and can use up capital in very inefficient ways. And likewise, not having anything that has a clearly defined competitive advantage or something super unique, because a lot of the times then you're just battling with ad spend, right? Or fighting for customers over just relationships, and relationships only get you so far if you're not building something really valuable.
Yeah. And for you, just based on what I've heard and read, you specifically invest in women.
We prefer,
Try to.
or I have a natural, because I'm a woman, I'm going to naturally see more. We have, but we don't, we are not exclusively what we call gender lens focused. We look at all teams because we have thesis driven around technology for the aging. So 72% of our founding teams at this point are female founders. And we do have one thing that's very important to me is that 100% of our boards have a female board member on them, which I think is really great, because it's nice to bring diverse thought around the table. And, diversity doesn't always come in gender. It can come in geography. It can come in background, because, if you have a woman who went to a very privileged boarding school and, went to Yale and then went to the Morgan Stanley training program and became a banker, you're going to have pretty much the same thinking process as a lot of the traditional teams there. So we just really like to stimulate great ideas. And I think you do that with diverse thinking. Yeah.
And when you see, let's say, when you study your women that are leading these companies, what are some of the differences that you see in approach from them to the males?
Everyone is different, right? But if we just generalize a little bit, I think that we can say more often than not, I will see with women founders a lack of confidence and a lack of bravado. And, somebody just said this to me the other day. They said, Tracy, great annual meeting, but you need a little more bravado. So I think we're a little bit shyer about talking about our accomplishments. And when we do, we tend to minimize them. And we don't talk as much about the big ideas and where we're going with something. And I'll often see a woman come in with a business plan, and her projected financials might say that she's going to 1 million at the end of 5 years or 5 million at the end of the 5 years. And always when it's more traditional teams, we'll see projections that go to 200 million at the end of 5 years. Yeah. So, and maybe somewhere in the middle is the truth, right? But I encourage women to really try to showcase who they are and what they're doing a little more often. But sometimes we do get pushed down for it as well. So what it is it's sometimes a reaction to forces we feel. So we have to everybody come together to try to make this happen for everyone, right?
Yeah. So everybody can win.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I totally get it. I want to throw this conversation a little bit back on you to where, how did you grow up? I always love to learn, like, what were the conversations that you heard in your house? What was the tone, the cadence of the house, just growing up, sitting around the table, from your family? How did you grow up?
Well, the biggest influence on my life, and I say the greatest mentors in my life, are books. And sometimes when people will say to me, oh, Tracy, I don't have access to mentors. I don't have access to people who are really successful to try to guide me and things like that. And I say, stop right there. That's not what I want to hear at all, because guess what? Everybody has access to a library. Yep. And everybody can go in and learn from the absolute best. All they have to do is pick up a biography of someone who's done something before that they're interested in. Yep. And that's what I did. And we had parents that were very, very focused on education and very focused on books. And a lot of times I just say, I feel really, really blessed to be, as a woman, born in a country like the United States, where I have so much freedom and so much opportunity, and blessed to have been born to parents that believed that it was valuable to educate a girl. Yeah. And they really did. And so I constantly had books around me. And my dad always said, you go to the bookstore, Tracy, we have an account and you buy whatever book you want, or go to the library and get whatever book you want. And I did. And I read constantly, and I still do. I still probably read about 50 or 60 books a year. I just devour them because I feel like there's always, in other people's experiences, there's always guidelines, or there's always breadcrumbs, we talked about, that you can follow. And I think people people miss that. And we're a pretty successful family. I don't know. My brother's a successful attorney down in South Carolina, and my sister was a supermodel.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. So we're different directions, but all doing great things. So
yeah. I want to ask you this about the books, because, I meet people today that do a lot of reading, and whatever book they're reading at that time, that's sort of who they become. So I find it interesting. How do you maintain clarity of thought and your own opinions and your own beliefs and conviction, and not allow books to have potentially a negative influence on you?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's, if a person's in that place, it's because they haven't gotten really quiet to figure out what are the voices inside of them, and what is the direction that they're supposed to be going. So then they're always guided by outside influences, whether it's a book, whether it's a television show, whether it's the latest podcast that they've heard. Yeah. And first of all, I think I have the strength to certainly put down a book I don't agree with. And I do that very often.
Yeah.
Where I'll start a book and if I'm sort of questioning a book too, where I'm not sure I want to spend the time reading it, I'll often, if someone's interviewed by someone like you, I'll often listen to a podcast or watch. I love Talks at Google. I watch those quite a bit, so that in an hour I can get the gist of something. But I think that you really need to spend the time. And I always encourage people, I don't know if you've heard of forest bathing, but to go spend time in nature. In the New York Times, it said that they were statistically proven you are something like 75% less likely to be depressed if you spend 2 hours a week in nature.
Wow, very cool.
And, I would hope, and maybe there's some people watching that don't have access, but I would hope that everyone sort of within an hour walking distance would have access to a park and could get some green grass and touch a tree. And if you spend those quiet moments, I really think that who you are inside and what you're meant to be comes out, and then you'll have conviction on that. And so everything else becomes additive rather than, supplementing who you are.
Right. I know there's many that I come across today, wherein some people subscribe to the hustle 365, 24/7 type culture. And they say, I would love to do that with those 2 hours a week, but I can't. I don't know if you've come across individuals that are so focused on the build and the grow that they can't even rationalize getting out of their office or out of their rhythm to go do that.
Yep. I think they're making a mistake. I mean, just from my personal perspective. And I think, I always laugh and say, I built my firm as an entrepreneur. I have the luxury of working any 17 hours a day I please. And, because it does. You have to take a long time and a lot of effort to get, especially in the beginning, to get things started. But I always feel like whether it's quiet time, whether it's meditation, I always say, if you don't have 2 minutes for yourself to try meditation, you've got much, much bigger issues. And sleep, meditation, exercise, and getting outside, those things are all compounding. You don't get, if you spend an hour outside, you don't get an hour back, you get 2 hours back.
Yeah.
If you sleep an extra hour and are well rested, again, you get 2 hours back. So I think that when people see it, that time as not being productive and wasted, I would completely argue the opposite and say that you'll do more, you'll be better, you'll have clarity of thought. And so give it a shot, at least for a week. What do you have to lose, right?
Yeah, people get so obsessed with trying to prove something that in that journey they sometimes lose themselves, they lose their own compass. And we're going to get into those breadcrumbs, but I want to talk again more about your business and your process and what it is that you've built. What was some of the resistance that you met in your journey early on? Getting involved with venture capital, what are some of the roadblocks and some of the points of friction that you've had to overcome?
Well, for sure, raising a first-time fund is probably one of the most difficult things that you can do. You are going out to people or institutions and you're saying, look, I want to take a pool of your money and I'm going to invest it somewhere, but I'm not going to tell you where. That somewhere out there, there's these companies that are doing some really interesting things, but I'll let you know when it happens.
Right.
and oh, by the way, I'm going to keep it for 10 years, and possibly could lose it all, or possibly could give you 5 times your money back. So it's a wild business, and it takes a leap of faith on the part of the investors really to come across the line as well. And look, obviously people have different ideas. Money's a funny thing of what they, some people are super conservative and they just want to keep it all in cash or just keep it in the bank. Don't even put it in the public equity market. So how could they ever think about private equity, which is what I do? So you have barriers on that. I think that maybe coming back to work after spending some time with my kids may have contributed to some of the difficulties. If I'd come straight out of a firm, I think I would have had a little bit easier time. But fortunately, I was able to overcome that with sort of this 17 hours of work with some good sleep and with some exercise.
Well, I thought that was super cool. How you had the I almost feel bad saying guts to stop working and raise your kids and then go back.
Yes.
Some people are like, I can't stop. I'm building this thing. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do. And I think it's super cool because it's you value both being a mother and, being a great businesswoman.
I think it's really important for anyone to have choices in what they're doing. And I think that if a man was interested in spending time with his children when they're little and helping them, I think that's fantastic. My husband has been taking the lead on our 2 teenage boys the last few years while I built this. And what a privilege for him to be able to spend time with his teenage boys. And we say that all the time, that a lot of men, unfortunately, because of traditional roles, don't get a chance to do that. And it was courageous. I had a little nudge by the fact that I almost lost my life in 9/11. I was scheduled to speak at the top of the World Trade Center at Windows in the World at 8:30 in the morning at a venture capital breakfast. And they called me twice because I was pregnant. And I said, I didn't want to do it. I wasn't going to come all the way downtown. And they kept calling me and I kept saying, you know what? No, I really don't want to do this. And so I think that gives you perspective too, when my son, who is now 19 turning 20, said, oh, Mom, I saved your life, which is great.
He'll always have that to tell you that.
Yeah. But it gives you perspective and makes you think about, and timing too. I think, with all of this, the best message is that don't be on some artificial timeline, right? Do what's right in your life at the time, what feels right to you and what's valuable. And then things, things can work out. We can do our best work after 50, no question.
Yeah. That's, I think, one thing that gets many people in trouble is timeline, pushing the clock, driving it. They're so far out in front that they miss today, or I coach many that feel like they're failing. They're always failing. They're doing great, but they're failing in their mind.
Yeah. And that's just a decision they've made, right? It has no bearing on what's actually happening.
And, for you have to, like you said, you have to go ask people for money.
Yep.
That's a big part of your business. And then deploying that capital, to get these people that you ask for money and, semi-promise a return to, you have to, deliver. How do you balance? I mean, I know the outdoors, the meditation, just in terms of your mindset, what are things that you tell yourself to keep yourself even and to keep yourself believing in yourself at all times?
Well, that comes from process, that's very much a part of it. And that at least if you complete the process using the experience and the learnings that you've had, either from working for a genius in this business, which I've had the privilege of working for a lot of really, really successful, wonderful guys. But then also too, the mentors, like John Doerr, when, I read his book, Measure What Matters and things like that. Implementing those process, at least you have a framework for success. You have a chance. If it's a repeatable process, that you can do that. And if you have certain things that you're going to look at and measure, you're a long ways away or a long ways towards that goal. But then it's also too tweaking it as you go along, right? And after we've made the investment, that's when my work really starts. I think for a lot of venture capitalists, it's where their work ends, unfortunately. But it's really where I start to roll up my sleeves and dive in and help companies with business development development and help them with strategy and help them bring independent board members, which is one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
It's a continuum, right?
Yeah, it is. And you have, it seems like you have a passion for the whole continuum from
I
start
do.
to finish, as
I
opposed
really
to just one piece of it. There are people that love to just raise the money and then they're done after that. And there's others
that's driven by ego, right?
Hmm.
That's assets under management is driven by ego, where if you are really fulfilling your purpose and finding where your puzzle fits in this 9 billion pieces in the world, then I think it's a much different thing.
I find it interesting, when you go on LinkedIn, and you enter into the finance community, that's something that's really broadcasted, right? Assets under management. That's in baseball, we use the batting average and how many home runs, but in your industry, it's assets under management. But for you,
how big you are, right? Yeah.
Right. But for you, when you were first starting out, very talented, big vision, looking to do something great, your assets under management were not huge, I'm guessing. And
exactly right.
But you had tremendous potential and you were going to get there. So it can often be deceiving just looking at that one figure.
Right. And we like to say all the time that we punch above our weight, that just because we don't bring the largest check to the table doesn't mean we're not going to be the greatest influence on the company. And it's very often the case, I'm proud to say. Yeah.
And so, and sometimes or oftentimes you guys make the best partners because you're all in, you're in on it with us, as opposed to here's some money, go do what you have to do. We're here with some advisory, but you better get us a return. You're in on the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Every step of the way.
Yeah. So. Which is super cool. All right. We have to dig into as we get towards the end here, we have to dig into your breadcrumbs. So like I said earlier, I love this. And when I heard you say that, I said, that's it. I gotta talk to her. And
oh my goodness. Thanks.
We won't give this away, but I do believe it's a future book for you.
Wow. Thank you.
Yes.
You know what? Thank you. I'll think about that.
It's a great title, right? Follow the breadcrumbs. Nobody better take that, by the way. We're coming after you. So
thank you. Will you help me?
Yeah, I will. I will help you. Thanks. But tell me about the breadcrumbs.
Well, I think that's, so often, and we've sort of touched on this throughout our conversation, which has been great, by the way, about people getting diverted by the next shiny, bright thing, right? Mm-hmm. And not really staying true to themselves. And I think when you do take the time to get quiet and be this, whether it's through, sometimes exercise can be really helpful, or yoga, meditation, or religion can help you with those things. Then you start to really say, okay, who am I inside, and what do I like, and what are my interests in, and really own the things that are great about you. And don't worry, nobody's perfect. You can't worry about those things that you don't have, that you look over your shoulder and you see that someone else is doing well. And when you do that and you get quiet, you start to notice things. And, whether it's something that pops up in your Instagram feed, or something that you hear on a podcast that really resonates with you. And you say, you know what, I think there's some opportunity here. I think that there's something that's different that I understand that other people don't. And then opportunities will come and someone will say, hey, well, do you want to do this? Or do you want to do that? And then because you found where your center is, when you see those opportunities, you can really grab them. And when that happens, more breadcrumbs start to fall, and you can, it's pretty magical, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And most people, I coach a lot of people that are typically under high levels of stress and resistance.
Yes.
And I feel like this breadcrumb concept is so powerful, because should you really be under that much stress and pressure and resistance to the point where A, you don't even know if you're doing the right thing, B, you're not enjoying it, is stress and resistance, does that go with success the way people think?
Yeah, it depends on your definition of success, right?
Right. Can I ask you yours?
Yeah, my definition of success is how I feel at the end of the day and whether I've helped people.
Okay.
And that nothing makes me feel better than that. whether it's helping one of my most successful founders that is, just trying to figure out how to get their next, couple $1 million worth of clients to buy their product, or whether it's helping someone who is just starting out and just trying to navigate and figuring out whether a venture capital investment is right for them. I feel really great. And so that's on the business side. And then obviously personally, taking care of myself, I invest in aging and longevity. And so making sure that I am healthy and that, I'm eating well and exercising and getting enough water. That's very important to me. And then success with my family. So making sure that my children feel like I'm present and that my husband feels like I'm present and loving them and being supportive. So those are my definitions of success.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's so powerful for people to hear, because I coach women too. And I believe from what I hear that many of them think they have to make a choice and that they can't have it all. And here you are letting us know, hey, you can have all of the things that you want.
I think you can. Something someone said one time is that you can have it all, just not all at the same time.
Yeah.
So that might be applicable to some people where they might have to be doing something, I certainly never presuppose or judge. I know that there's some people that just have to put food on the table.
Yep.
They don't have any choices and they're working 3 jobs, and my heart goes out to them. And I wish them all the luck in the world. But then, maybe there might be another time in their life when they are under less stress that they could think about doing something that really brings them a lot of joy.
Yeah, I love it. And how do you compartmentalize all this and balance it all? So it sounds like, you are into your...
Who said anything about balance?
I hate that word. Well, let me ask you this. How do you get it all done in the day? How about that?
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I amaze
I'm
myself.
a mom.
I can't believe I always call it spinning plates. I've got all these spinning plates going on at the same time. And, it helps to have good help. We have a great team.
Okay.
And so that really helps me a lot. But, sometimes I just don't know. I look and I say, because I have so many different facets of my fund where I'm working on the administrative side of it. I'm working on current deals and trying to help the portfolio companies. I'm looking at new deals and then, going out and having to raise the fund. And it's definitely a lot. And I guess I must be in the right place and doing the right thing because I can handle it. I think if you
working in alignment.
Yeah. If you can't, I think it might be the universe saying to you, that's not your skill set. That's not where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And you have to have a lot of good routines and going on as well in order to get everything done. So.
Oh, absolutely. And I still believe in making a paper list every day of the priorities and the objectives of what I want to accomplish that day and when and how much time they're going to take. And I heard a great thing the other day, and I can't remember if it was which basketball player it was, Michael Jordan or something, that said that when they go into a grocery store, if they don't have a list, they wander around for 2 hours. But if they have a list, they can get in and out in 15 minutes.
Yep.
And that's how I feel about my work.
Yeah. I'm with you. People say I don't have time. It's like, well, do you have a list? Do you plan what it is? I do it a little different. I plan my week and I give myself the freedom to say, as long as this is done by Friday, we're good.
Well, that's what I do too. I sit on Sunday nights and I look out over my week and what I want to accomplish during the week and what days and what priorities. And then I do it on a day-to-day basis as well. And, sometimes stuff doesn't get done and it gets moved to the next day or the next week. And you know what? Maybe that wasn't the most important thing on your list. And sometimes there's fires that you have to put out. And we all have to deal with that. It's
life, right?
Yep.
It's definitely life. I have 2 more quick questions for you. One is for those that are not sure if they're doing the right thing. Maybe they didn't follow the breadcrumbs and they followed some other things, whether it's pleasing somebody else, doing something for external applause, whatever it may be. How do they get themselves back on track?
Getting quiet, finding those moments, just coming back and really trying to understand who you are as a person. And then you can listen to those outside influence, the outside pressures or the outside forces that are saying, okay, no, no, no. You know, a lot of people will come to me and say, oh, I've pitched 100 people and no one has given me money. And I'm like, do you think maybe there's something wrong with your business plan? They think that it's just hard to raise money. I'm like, no, you know, this is so, but that person is not listening. That person is not, the person probably isn't hearing the suggestions. You know, a lot of times when you get a meeting, no matter what business or what you're in, if you get a meeting with someone who knows something about your business, like take a second and listen to them when they're, you know, don't just go in with your one definition of success that I'm coming out the door with a check, you know, and I think people fail to do that. And it's, you know, when they're all hyped up and thinking about a million things and I've got to catch this cab and I've got to do this and that, they don't listen and they don't take it in, because the universe will show you you are on the right track or you are not on the right track. And the universe will use people to help you do that and to say, yeah, I think this is really great. I think you should keep going this way. Or people will say, no, you know, this is not working. And you need to listen to that. And so many people don't. They get very sort of stubborn and say, look, I've designed this. This is what I'm going with. And my only objective is to get money to make it work. Yeah.
And I'm guessing too, some people could get spooked when they start following the breadcrumbs and they're like, this is too easy. Something must be wrong here. Yeah, you know, it's supposed to be harder than this.
Yeah. It's magical. When it works, it really works. And there's that thing, the flywheel effect too, where it just gets better and better and better. And success breeds success. I mean, it's a saying for a reason, right?
Yep. It's a game of momentum.
Yep. You have to get those couple first wins under your belt. Those are the hardest ones, but then things.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the breadcrumb concept. But my last question for you, I call this the Becoming a Champion show, because I feel like we're all on a journey to become our champion self. What does the word champion mean to you, just off the top of your head?
Champion to me may mean something different than maybe most of the people that you talk to. To me, champion means someone who's supporting other people and helping them realize their best selves and being for them and supporting them.
Yeah, I love it. And
I love to champion others.
And how about this? Just playing off that, because there's going to be some people that hear that and say, "Well, I can't trust others. I've done that in the past. They've screwed me." Because there's people that think like that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Listen, that's the universe telling you something, right? Mm-hmm. That was sometimes this is a little bit odd, but I have those people in my life and I don't like them. and so I've given them a name, and the name I've given them is trolls. And yes, those are the trolls. Okay. And those trolls in your life are there to probably teach you the most valuable lesson, even though you hate it. So they're showing you something through their horrible ways, you know, whether it's cutting you off, maybe you're going too fast, right? Or, or putting an obstacle in front of you. Maybe there's something else that you need to learn from that. So, listen, I don't like it as much as anybody, but if we don't stop and take lessons from all of those things that have happened to us, then we're just doomed to make those mistakes again until we get it.
I'm sure did it help you once you gave them a classification?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because then it's it takes their power away. Right.
Yep.
And it's, I also call them speed bumps.
Yep.
So, sometimes I get speed bumps in my way of challenges, and you have to be grateful for the speed bumps, because they're not going to slow you down, or they're slowing you down a little bit. Sorry, but they're not going to stop you. And it's just, nobody ever learned anything from success. We learn everything that we learn through our failures and through our disappointments, through our speed bumps and our trolls.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great finisher right there. So cool. Tracy, I'm glad we had a chance to catch up. This was awesome.
Oh, I am too. Great. This was really fun. Thank you so much.
All right, team. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. I know that I'm so inspired by Tracy to continue to follow my breadcrumbs and continue to follow that path of least resistance, which is what we're not taught today. So many are speaking about the grind and how we have to push through and keep on pushing. But oftentimes I meet so many that are forcing their way to the top of a place that they don't even want to be. So if we follow our breadcrumbs and follow our passion and let that river take us where we are supposed to go, we will end up where it is we are supposed to be. So this was an amazing episode. I hope you found value in it. Tracy is amazing. She's humble. She's inspirational. And listen, she is doing it. She's following her breadcrumbs and doing amazing things in the venture capital space. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a like, give it a share, and help us build this team of champions. And we'll see you next week with another great episode of the Becoming a Champion Show. See ya.